Hi team, Katie here from Equestrian Movement, and today we are going to talk about your horse that likes to bite you. So today we're talking about how your horse biting you isn't actually naughty. Quite often that is what we get told, and then we end up smacking the horse on the nose for being naughty to try and get them to cut it out. And you're probably here because that hasn't been particularly effective. So the first thing that we need to understand about our horses trying to bite us is that it is very natural and normal for them to bite and to be mouthy. Mouthing and biting and licking and nibbling is part of their day-to-day communication with other horses. And so there's a couple of reasons why they're going to be doing that with you. So firstly, if your horse isn't getting interaction with other horses, for example, if they're registered in a paddock alone next to other horses and not in with them, if they're in your backyard and they are alone, different situations, if they're stabled where they're not getting that interaction with other horses, they have an emotional need that is needing to be met. They have, hormones and neurotransmitters within their body that are expressing to them that they need to mouth and play, because this is how they connect with others, how they connect on an emotional level. So the requirement, like innate requirement physically, is for them to mouth and play with other horses. They're gonna still experience that, and so the only thing that they have to take it out on is you. Or they might start wind sucking or cribbing or showing those other mouthy behaviors on other pieces of equipment. So another reason why your horse is nipping and biting at you is it could be trying to tell you something. One of the times, probably most recently, that I've experienced a horse nipping at me was when I first started down at the riding school, and I was a little bit lazy and wanted to use one of the school horses for 3 beginner lessons rather than use it for 2 and tack up another one for the 3rd lesson before I had a stable hand in helping me out. And Phoenix very muchly didn't want to do 3 beginner lessons in a row, and completely understandable, because the beginner lessons are quite taxing on the horse's body for how hard they have to work to balance the rider. And so he would be perfectly fine for the first 2 lessons, but by the time I got to that 3rd lesson, he was starting to nip at me and tell me that he'd had enough and he didn't want to do anymore. Angel does the same. So if I ask for too much work from her, she'll start nipping at me and saying, that's enough, I need a break, like turn me out, let's start again tomorrow. So it can be your horse expressing to you needs, boundaries that need addressing, what they physically feel comfortable and competent with, where you're maybe stretching what you're asking of them too far. Maybe they don't understand what you're trying to get them to do. So there's different times there that your horse is going to be nipping at you to try and communicate something, and so it can be a little bit challenging to troubleshoot that, but it's not impossible. You just kind of want to figure out what else is happening at that point of the nipping, and see if you can tie in and associate it with something else that's going on. They can be nipping at you to tell you that they are in pain. We quite often see this when our horses are getting girthed up, so make sure that they don't have any ulcers. But I can also see it sometimes when I'm picking up hooves. They try to nip at your butt if they're a bit sore with picking their legs up and that kind of thing. So you want to make sure that you're ruling out pain as well. So lastly, one of the biggest reasons that we're going to see our horse nipping at us is because they're seeking attention, also known as seeking connection, seeking relationship with you, seeking to engage you in play. So if you have a horse that nips at you, that's seeking attention, if you're talking to somebody else at the barn, your horse will start nipping at you to get their attention. to get your attention off that person onto them. But what will happen is quite often you will have been told to smack your horse on the nose to tell them off for nipping, and they just see that as a game. So if they can nip you before you smack them, they nip, you smack, they nip, you smack, they nip, you smack, they nip, you smack. And so they try and figure out how to get that nip in without getting smacked. If they can get quicker, you'll see them like kind of go at you but maybe not quite get you. And so what has happened is you've turned it into a game, because the thing that they are seeking is attention and connection. And so because you've paid attention to them by reprimanding them for it, they use it then to kind of like agitate you into play. And that's what they do with other horses. If you watch like a young horse in a herd that's trying to stimulate the herd into play, maybe the other horses are older and less willing to play, then you'll see them kind of run and nip and run away and run and nip and run away. And what they're trying to do is they're just like basically being a little nuisance, a little annoying pony, trying to like trigger the other horses into chasing them, and then they can get into a game and play together. So that is probably one of the biggest reasons why we see our horse nipping if we have ruled out pain. And so what we do with our nippers is we do what's called, we've got a little program that we call turning nippers into lickers. And so what that does is it addresses the need for engagement, connection, and physical contact. But it says, I don't really want to be bitten. I don't really want you nipping at me, but we can still have this, level of attention and connection, but just if you're licking me instead. So I'm going to share some video with you of us turning nippers into lickers, and you'll see this most often with like horses that are naturally mouthy. The other thing that we do is we provide them sensory objects that they can express their mouthiness on. Sometimes it just feels good to have something in your mouth to chew on. It might sound a bit weird, but some of the horses, they really enjoy the texture of grinding it between their teeth. And so if they don't have like a lot of sensory objects within their paddock, if it's just like a flat paddock, no trees, nothing for them to really play with in their mouth, then we're going to want to introduce other textures and objects into their environment so that they can have that sensory experience that their mouth is looking for. If you think about them in the wild, they're going to be, chewing on bark, like rummaging through bushes. Like, they're going to have so much more experience and exposure to different textures in their mouth. And so some of them just really want that. And so we want to try and provide that for them. So what you can see here as I'm working with Hunter is that when he goes to try and nip at my hand there, I've got the open palm like we would work with our horses if, we were offering them a treat from our hand. So it means that he can't get a hold of anything with his teeth. So he basically just stops trying to bite with his teeth. So once he's not biting with his teeth, what he does do to still, express that mouthiness that he has is he starts licking. And so then we can teach our horses to kind of like fulfill that need to mouth something. We can do it by encouraging them to lick us instead. And so what happens is it becomes a really handy tool that if our horses are feeling stressed, anxious, or worried, we can just offer them our hand and they can lick it, and it fills their emotional cup and gives them the support to give them the emotional agility and the emotional self-regulation to try again without feeling that stress, pressure, and tension. And so then you can play with their lip, and that encourages them to mouth at you again, and then you can get them licking you. And then it turns into just a big old love fest when we have our horses at that point where they're comfortable with the licking behavior. And they just lick you to death as if they were a dog, like Gunner is doing here. That's it from me. Until next time, happy trails.